What happens when a family feud, years of silence, resentment, and buried secrets, finally erupts under blinding studio lights with cameras trained on every twitch of emotion and every crack in the voice? Before we dive deeper into this explosive confrontation, make sure you subscribe to Chanel Roots of Revenge and hit like and comment right now, because what you're about to witness is one of the most shocking on-air mediations ever captured. The moment I stepped onto the stage, the atmosphere felt like electricity trembling just beneath the surface, the studio audience already whispering like they sensed the storm that was about to break. My younger brother sat across from me, perfectly composed on the outside, wearing a tailored navy suit as if he were arriving at an award ceremony rather than a televised battle for the future of our family business. His jaw tightened the second he saw me, and I could tell he'd rehearsed every line, every dramatic pause, every accusation he planned to throw my way. The host, Mara Valen, famous for orchestrating some of the most intense celebrity sit-downs of the decade, glided onto the stage in her signature calm, as if even she wasn't entirely sure what she was stepping into. Cameras zoomed in, capturing the smallest twitch of tension between us as she welcomed the viewers and announced that tonight's mediation wasn't just a negotiation between two businessmen, it was a fracture in a family empire. My brother leaned forward before she even finished her sentence, his voice sharp and rehearsed. "I'm here to take what should have been mine all along," he declared, letting the words slice through the silence like a blade. The audience gasped in unison. Mara tilted her head sympathetically. "You're demanding half of the business?" He didn't blink. "Half," he repeated, his gaze locked onto mine with an intensity that almost felt venomous. "Because I helped build it. Because I sacrificed. Because I've been ignored for too long." I felt a rush of heat in my chest, anger, sadness, disbelief, but I kept my hands still and my voice even. "You sacrificed?" I said quietly, and the entire audience leaned in as if my whisper echoed louder than his declaration. "You want half the business," I continued, "but you refuse to take responsibility for what happened 5 years ago." Suddenly, the air inside the studio shifted. It was subtle at first, like a change in temperature, but then it hit all at once, an emotional impact so strong the audience inhaled collectively. Even Mara froze, sensing that she had stepped into something deeper than a simple financial dispute. She turned to my brother, eyes narrowing with curiosity. "What happened 5 years ago?" she asked. My brother's facade cracked, not fully, not in a way the casual viewer would notice, but enough for me to see the fear flicker behind his eyes. "That's irrelevant," he snapped quickly. "We're not discussing that." But the audience wouldn't accept that. Their silence begged for truth. Mara's expression softened, her journalist instincts already sharpening. "If something from the past is affecting the present," she said gently, "then it's not irrelevant at all." I inhaled slowly and reached into my jacket. I didn't pull the paper out, not yet, but my brother saw the movement and the color drain from his face. He knew exactly what I had brought with me. He had hoped, prayed even, that I wouldn't dare use it on national television. "Don't," he muttered under his breath, barely audible to anyone except me and the cameras that caught everything. His fingers tightened around the armrest of his chair, a subtle tremor revealing more than his words ever could. But I wasn't ready to expose him. Not yet. The moment needed to build. The truth needed to simmer until the tension was unbearable. "You want half?" I said softly, still not pulling out the document. "But you haven't told them why you suddenly want it now." He clenched his teeth. "Because I deserve it." "No," I said, "because you're afraid." Another wave of stunned murmurs rippled through the room. Mara leaned forward, her voice almost a whisper. "Afraid of what?" My brother shot me a warning glare sharp enough to cut, but there was nothing he could do to stop what had already begun. "Afraid," I said, turning to face him fully, "that the truth will finally come out." The studio felt like it was inhaling, holding that breath, waiting for the blow. But I let the moment linger. I let the suspense tighten its grip around the room. My brother swallowed hard, and for the first time tonight, he didn't look like the confident man who walked onto the stage. He looked like someone standing at the edge of a cliff, terrified of the drop. And as the lights dimmed for the next scheduled break, the tension didn't break with it. It only deepened, heavy and electric, as the entire audience knew they were witnessing the beginning of an unraveling that could destroy everything. When the cameras blinked back on after the break, it felt as though the entire studio had rearranged itself around the tension, every spotlight sharpening the edges of our silhouettes like two figures carved into opposing sides of a battlefield. Mara's voice was calm as she welcomed viewers back, but her eyes flickered with unmistakable anticipation. She knew something massive was stirring beneath the surface, and she was ready to guide the world straight into its heart. My younger brother shifted in his seat, trying to settle the agitation in his body, but his fingers tapped an uneven rhythm against his thigh, betraying the storm inside him. "Let's pick up where we left off," Mara said, turning her attention to him. "You say you're claiming what's yours. You believe you're owed half of the business. But your brother mentioned an incident from 5 years ago that seems important." My brother's jaw flexed with the bitterness of someone forced into a corner they desperately wanted to avoid. "We're not discussing ancient history," he said sharply. "This is about what's fair now." I could hear the frustration swelling in his tone. Panic, too, hidden beneath layers of practiced ego. "5 years isn't ancient," Mara replied gently, "especially if it's affecting your family and your business today." The audience murmured, the tension thrumming again, as if the room itself leaned closer. I leaned forward, feeling the weight of the document still tucked safely inside my jacket. "He wants half," I said, my voice steady despite the pounding in my chest. "But he's refusing to acknowledge the price I paid when he disappeared." My brother whipped his head toward me, eyes blazing. "I didn't disappear," he shot back. "I was dealing with things. Private things." "Private things?" I repeated, the bitter laugh escaping before I could contain it. "You left me to run everything alone. You walked out during the worst year we ever had. Investors were pulling out, contractors were threatening lawsuits, and you were off the grid." His face flushed red. Whether from anger or embarrassment, I couldn't tell, but the reaction was enough to ignite the room. The audience gasped, whispers rippling like tiny aftershocks. Mara's voice softened further. "Is that true?" she asked him. My brother hesitated, a split-second pause that told the entire world exactly what they needed to know. But he tried anyway. "I had personal issues," he said defensively. "We all do," I called out, my voice rising with years of swallowed frustration. "But personal issues don't excuse lies." His head snapped up. "Lies? You're really going to accuse me of lying on national television?" "You left me with a business drowning in debt," I said, my voice shaking now not with fear, but with long-buried hurt. "And the only reason we survived is because I made a deal you still don't know about." The crowd fell into absolute silence. My brother blinked, confusion flickering through his expression. "What deal?" he demanded. I didn't answer immediately. I let the silence stretch, watched the fear curl around the edges of his confidence like smoke tightening around a flame. Mara leaned forward. "What deal did you make?" she asked softly. "A deal that cost me," I said. "A deal I never wanted to make, but I had to because he wasn't there." My brother's breath quickened. "You're making it sound like I abandoned you on purpose." The laugh that left my lips was colder than I intended. "You didn't abandon me for business reasons," I said quietly. "You abandoned me because you thought you could outrun what you did." He froze, completely. No angry retort, no dramatic flair, just a stillness so sudden it made the audience sit rigid in their seats. "Don't," he whispered, his voice trembling for the first time. Mara picked up on it instantly. "What is it that he did?" she asked, her voice barely audible, as if afraid to break the fragile tension hanging in the air. My heart beat louder than the studio monitors. I saw every emotion flicker across my brother's face. Defiance, fear, anger, shame, like storm clouds rolling violently across a sky that couldn't decide whether to break or to hold everything in. "There's something I haven't told anyone," I said, speaking slowly, each word deliberate. "Not my staff. Not our investors. Not even my closest friends. Only one person knows the truth, and he's sitting right there." My brother shifted, his leg bouncing uncontrollably, his breath uneven. "You're trying to ruin me," he murmured, more to himself than to me. "No," I said. "I'm trying to stop you from rewriting history." The document in my jacket felt heavier now, almost burning through the fabric. Mara's voice was barely steady. "What's in the document?" she asked. My brother shot up in his seat. "Don't show it!" he barked, the desperation in his voice ringing through the studio like a dropped glass shattering on tile. The audience jolted. Mara stared at him in disbelief. "Why don't you want him?" When the cameras faded back in for the next segment, the studio didn't feel like a stage anymore. It felt like a pressure chamber, the kind that amplifies every breath, every heartbeat, every unspoken truth threatening to burst. The audience sat utterly still, as if they feared that even shifting in their seats might disrupt the fragile equilibrium between two brothers on the edge of a collision neither could escape. Mara's voice emerged softly, but with a tremor that betrayed how deeply she too was caught in the gravity of the moment. "Before the break," she said, "we witnessed a revelation that clearly shook both of you, and it seems there's more beneath the surface. I want to understand what's really driving this conflict." My younger brother exhaled shakily, his fingers clasped tightly together as though he were terrified of what they might do if left unrestrained. "I'm asking for my share," he said, his voice cracking despite his attempt to steady it. "That's all." "That's not all," I said immediately, unable to hold the words back any longer. "This is about guilt and fear and consequences." He turned toward me sharply, his eyes glassy with a mix of anger and desperation. "You think you're the only one who suffered?" he snapped. "You think you're the only one who paid a price?" The audience murmured again, a low, rippling wave that moved through the room like a pulse. Mara leaned forward, her voice gentle but persistent. "Then tell us," she urged softly. "What price did you pay?" My brother swallowed hard, his gaze flickering around the studio as though searching for an escape route that didn't exist. Finally, he whispered, "I lost myself." I stared at him, stunned for a moment, because buried beneath those words was something raw and real, something he had never once admitted in all the years of silence between us. But that truth didn't excuse what came next. "You didn't just lose yourself," I said, my voice quieter now, not angry but weary. "You dragged me into the undertow with you." He shook his head helplessly. "You don't understand." "Then explain it," I said. "Tell them what you did. Tell them why I had to make deal after deal, sacrifice after sacrifice, just to keep the business afloat while you were gone." His lips parted, but no words came out. The audience leaned in again, the entire room holding its breath. Mara waited a long moment before she turned to me. "You said earlier," she reminded gently, "that you made a deal he doesn't know about. A deal that left you carrying all the weight. What exactly happened?" I hesitated, not because I didn't know how to say it, but because saying it would be like slicing open a wound I had spent years stitching shut. My brother watched me with terror rippling under his expression, the kind a person wears when they know the truth is about to surface and swallow them whole. 5 years ago, I began slowly, when the business was collapsing, When every bank we owed money to was breathing down our necks, and when he disappeared without a word, I had to take out a personal loan. Mara nodded, confusion crossing her face. A loan? A massive one, I clarified. One that put everything I owned at risk, my home, my savings, my future. The only way to get it approved was to sign full liability over to myself. And because he was gone, I had to legally remove him from the partnership just to keep the company alive. The audience gasped, their reaction echoing through the studio. My brother recoiled as if struck. "You removed me?" he whispered, his voice trembling. "What did you expect me to do?" I demanded, emotion cracking through my words. "Wait! Hope! Pretend everything wasn't burning to the ground! You had no right! I had every right!" I cut in, my voice breaking. "You weren't there! I had no way to even contact you! You left me to face everything alone!" He shook his head frantically. "I didn't leave to hurt you!" "You left because you were scared," I said, "because of what happened that night." His entire body went still, absolutely still. Mara sensed it immediately. "What night?" she asked quietly. My brother's voice dropped to a whisper. "Don't." But it was too late. The truth was already rising to the surface like something long submerged, too heavy to hold down anymore. "The night everything fell apart," I said, my voice thickening. "The night he made a mistake that cost us nearly everything." My brother slammed his hands on the armrests, fury erupting in his eyes. I said, "Stop." "You caused the deal with Marston to collapse," I continued, each word like a hammer breaking open the past. "You showed up intoxicated to the biggest investor meeting we ever had. You insulted him, nearly fought one of his board members, and drove him out the door before we could even start negotiations." The audience let out a sharp, collective gasp. Mara leaned back, stunned. My brother looked at me in utter disbelief, pain streaking across his face. "I was struggling," he. When the cameras returned for the final segment, the air in the studio felt completely transformed, as if everyone inside had just witnessed a storm that left the ground trembling beneath them, waiting now for the aftershock that could either destroy what was left or force something new to grow in its ruins. Mara exhaled slowly, bracing herself, her voice barely above a whisper as she addressed us. "We've heard more truth tonight than anyone expected, and I think the world can feel that there's one final piece, the one you've both been circling." My younger brother stared down at his hands, as if studying the way they trembled, unable to stop the shaking that had betrayed him for the past hour. The weight of everything, the past, the guilt, the fear, pressed so heavily against him that even sitting upright seemed like an effort. I reached into my jacket with deliberate slowness, feeling the document between my fingers. This was the moment he'd been dreading, and the room knew it. The audience collectively held its breath, the silence so tense it felt like a physical pressure in the air. Mara leaned forward. "Is that the document you mentioned earlier?" she asked softly. I nodded, pulling out the single sheet of paper that had haunted both of us for half a decade. My brother's head snapped up, eyes widening with panic that spilled into something almost childlike. Fear stripped of pride, fear that revealed the boy he used to be before life hardened everything around him. "Please," he whispered, his voice cracking, "don't show them." The rawness of his plea washed over me, and for a moment, even with the audience watching, even with the camera zoomed in, there was no business, no fight, no betrayal. Only two brothers and a truth suspended between them. "They deserve to know why you disappeared," I said, my voice low, thick with emotion. "Why everything fell apart." "I know," he whispered, tears gathering in the corners of his eyes. "But I'm not that person anymore." My hand tightened around the paper. "Then let them see what you've moved past." He swallowed hard, and in that moment, I saw something break inside him. Not the destructive kind of break that tears people apart, but the fragile kind that happens when someone finally stops running. He nodded shakily. Okay. Mara leaned back, visibly startled by the sudden shift, while the audience leaned even further forward, hanging on the edge of whatever truth was about to drop. I unfolded the document slowly, the sound of the paper crackling echoing through the silent studio. This, I said, lifting it toward the lights, is the signed statement from the police department. The night of the Marston deal, the night he disappeared for 7 months. It wasn't because he ran off for no reason. It wasn't because he didn't care. It was because he was arrested. Gasps tore through the studio like a gust of wind. My brother closed his eyes, tears finally breaking free and rolling down his cheeks. Mara froze. Arrested? She repeated slowly. I nodded. For a DUI? For crashing into a parked car outside the hotel where our investors were staying? For causing a scandal that would have destroyed our business if it had gone public? The studio erupted. Shocked voices, hands over mouths, whispers flying like sparks in a dry forest. My brother hid his face in his hands, shoulders shaking. I was drunk, he choked out. I was drowning, and I didn't know who to call. The pain in his voice cracked something open inside me, something I'd locked away for years. You should have called me, I said quietly, my own eyes burning. You're my brother. He shook his head helplessly. I was ashamed. And when I got out, I didn't know how to face you. I thought, if I disappeared long enough, maybe the mess would disappear too. The audience wasn't breathing. Mara swallowed hard, visibly moved. So you carried this alone, she said to me, to protect him? I nodded slowly. If the arrest had gone public, it would have destroyed everything. So I kept it hidden. Paid the damages, made the deal. Handled the lawsuits, protected his name while he was gone. My brother looked at me, face streaked with tears, disbelief etched into every feature. You ruined yourself to protect me, he whispered. And now you want the business, I said, my voice trembling, without acknowledging the cost. The whole room stayed silent for several seconds that felt like they lasted an hour. Then, he wiped his face with a trembling hand and spoke so quietly the microphones almost missed it. I don't want half anymore. The audience gasped again, but this time it wasn't with shock. It was with the weight of something finally shifting. I didn't understand what you carried, he continued. I didn't understand what you saved me from. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. My throat constricted. The anger I'd carried for years didn't vanish, but it softened at the edges, replaced by something heavier and more human. I never wanted to destroy you,